fifth Democratic debate was held last night. Did anything happen? One House committee pushed that weed bill forward. Will it pass Congress? And Jeffrey Epstein, what do you think happened? Theories abound, but the cops have a couple of suspects. I'm Jamal Simmons. Here's why you should care. The fireworks at yesterday's impeachment hearing were not matched on the Democratic debate stage last night. Instead of candidates focusing their fire on South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg, they took the time to explain their positions in a series of questions that rarely saw the candidates even engage each other very much. The debate took place in Atlanta at the Tyler Perry Studios, and candidates took time to focus on their plans for black voters. Democratic Senator Cory Booker kicked it off in his first answer, where he began talking about the kind of wealth-building agenda that appeals to so many everyday Democrats who aren't as ideological as the party's most progressive wing.
We Democrats also have to talk about how to grow wealth as well. When I stood in church recently and asked folks in a black church how many people here want to be entrepreneurs, half the church raised their hands. If we as a country if we have a party, don't start talking not just about how to tax wealth, but to give more people opportunities to create wealth, to grow businesses, to have their American dream. Because we need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. But the people in communities I frequent, their aspiration for their lives is not just to have those fair wages. They want to have an economy that provides not just equalities in wealth, but they want to have equalities of opportunity.
Senator Elizabeth Warren brought up her plans to help African Americans grow assets by focusing on housing and the impact of racist redlining.
The federal government has subsidized the purchase of housing for decades for white people and has said for black people, you're cut out of the deal. That was known as redlining. When I built a housing plan, it's not only a housing plan about building new units, it's a housing plan about addressing what is wrong about government-sponsored discrimination, how we need to address it, and we need to say we're going to reverse it.
And South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who has been struggling to win African American voters, talked about that struggle in the spin room last night, too.
Do you think that your answers to questions might have satisfied maybe some black voters who don't know about you?
Well, certainly this was another opportunity to reach out and connect with black voters who I can tell are still getting to know me and sizing me up. And I've got a responsibility to make sure that I get that message out without the benefit of having been a national name for years and years. That means not only explaining the what, the policies like our Douglas Plan for Black America that is about tearing down systemic racism and creating not just economic opportunity, but greater access to justice, housing, education, health, and voting.
Why you should care. It's hard to win the Democratic nomination and impossible for a Democrat to win the White House without strong black support. Today, Joe Biden is the undeniable leader among African American voters. If anybody else is going to challenge him, the clock is ticking. The effort to make marijuana legal on a national level just reached a huge milestone this week. On Wednesday, the House Judiciary Committee voted 24-10 in a landslide approval of legislation that would get rid of federal penalties for cannabis, remove conviction records, and invest in communities to partake in the emerging cannabis economy. They are particularly focused on communities of color that have been disproportionately targeted by drug enforcement. Decriminalization would be applied to both previous and pending convictions. Even though the committee passed the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, or the MORE Act as it's called, it still needs to pass in the House and the Senate. But it's the closest we've gotten to a comprehensive national effort to legalize weed, and it's a clear signal of the country's thinking on the matter. A new Pew Research poll found that 67% of Americans support legalizing marijuana, an all-time high. Why should you care? Besides being able to legally take a toke outside of a few states in D.C., supporters of legalization argue the criminal focus on prohibiting marijuana has done untold damage in our country. For one thing, hundreds of thousands have been incarcerated, many of them people of color. And for another, black market sales fund drug cartels who engage in violence and intimidation all over the globe. But detractors fear legalization will increase cannabis use and irresponsible industry practices. Despite the doubters, the bill is said to have support from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, according to BuzzFeed News. You may remember the case of rich financier and registered sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. 2 prison guards will now be charged in connection with his death. Tova Noel and Michael Thomas were on duty the night that Epstein died. And no, they didn't kill him, but you might recall an internal report indicated he committed suicide. An investigation following Epstein's death determined the prison guards who were overseeing the 9th floor cell block where Epstein was being held found that they falsified cell check logs, were sleeping while on duty, and surfing the internet. A video of the cell block shows that instead of doing their rounds, Noel and Thomas were in the common area. This all happened during the hours in which Epstein died. If convicted, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas are facing 30 and 20 years behind bars, respectively. Both pled not guilty, and the lawyer representing Thomas and his client Noel are being scapegoated. There are a lot of questions about Epstein's death, a lot of theories. He was connected to lots of high-profile officials, politicians, lawyers, a lot of other people, and some don't believe he took his own life, including his brother, who hired a pathologist who determined the neck fracture seemed more like the result of homicide rather than a self-inflicted injury. Why you should care. The FBI and Justice Department's Inspector General have confirmed Epstein's death was self-inflicted, but negligence by the part of those on duty played a role. People go to jail as punishment, not for punishment. And if there was foul play, America needs to know. Thanks for watching Hill TV on YouTube. Be sure to click subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we post new videos. And head to thehill.com for all the latest political news.